God is good.
All the time.
All the time.
God is good.
Amen. I don't know if you've stopped to think how risky it can be to not conform. For whatever reason it is, and I don't necessarily claim to really understand it, but individuality makes other people uncomfortable. There's something about our character and nature as people where we like everyone to conform and kind of dress like us, look like us, sound like us, drive like us, eat like us, whatever. Non-conformity makes people uncomfortable. And I don't know how often we stop when we think about the person of Jesus, all the things that you consider about him. You know, you think about the miracles he performed. You think about his message of love. You think about all the things he focuses on in the kingdom. What I'm not sure we stop to consider is that Jesus thought for himself. He doesn't go with the mainstream of thought, with the rabbis, with whatever is current at the temple. And he certainly doesn't go with what pleases the crowd. That's not at all what we see. We never see Jesus consulting the crowd to see what's favorable or trendy. Right? And I hate to sound cynical, but it seems like, politicians like to talk about whatever is going to get them elected. And I don't know that the church is not also guilty of that. The church universal, you know what I'm saying? But Jesus doesn't consult. He doesn't seem to care what the crowd has to say. Which leads me to my next point. Believe it or not, Jesus might not like everything that you like. He might not see things the way that you see things. He might not care about the same topics that you care about. And honestly, he may have different priorities than you have. And of course, Jesus might be more independent than you care for him to be. I think we kind of like to think of God as being in our corner and liking what we like and wanting what we want. Last week we looked at where Jesus cleanses the temple, right? It's the middle of the Passover feast. Turns over the tables, makes the whip, drives everyone out. You guys remember that from last week. He confronts the exploitation of religion, and then John inserts a paragraph after that narrative. And it goes on to explain Jesus just a little bit further. So after the cleansing of the temple, John says, now when he was in Jerusalem, so the tense of the Greek is it's a continuing action. It's still the Passover festival. It's still that time. Now when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover feast, so it's continuing the thread from where he cleanses the temple and has that discussion, destroy this temple, destroy this body, I'll raise it again in 3 days, all that, right? Many believed in his name when they saw the signs that he was doing, but Jesus on his part did not entrust himself to them. It's a word play in the Greek. It's the same verb, pistuo, believed. And in the Greek, he didn't believe in them. It's a word play. Our English translation misses it because it looks like it's two different phrases. They believed in him, but he doesn't trust them. And there's a lot of nuances to belief of the word trust. So I don't think it's inaccurate for our English translations to say that, but I also think it's interesting that John uses the same verb. They believed, he didn't believe in them. Why? Because he knew all people and needed no one to bear witness about man, for he himself was very cynical. For he himself knew what was in man. He knows that the very people he comes to save in that last week are going to do what? They're going to go from Hosanna, Hosanna to crucify. So So Jesus doesn't depend on the crowds. And I think most of us, if we'll be honest with ourselves, we can succumb to flattery pretty easily. Jesus had everything they were looking for. He heals people, he feeds people, he confronts the Jewish leaders head on, and he's Messiah material. And yet, at the very same time, commits all these, he performs signs, more than John records, right? When he was in Jerusalem at the Passover, many believed in his name when they saw the signs. Well, so far, what did we see? He cleans the temple. But there's other things. John doesn't take the time to record it. And in fact, 8 months from now, when we get to the end of John, we'll forget today's conversation. But John will conclude the book with, all the world could not what? Could not hold the books if everything Jesus did was recorded. Now, just to be vulnerable, like if I had the ability to turn water into wine and do miracles, I think probably the immature person in me would do some of it for attention, would do some of it to be liked. I don't know. It would be hard. You might be mature enough to say, gosh, I would never, I mean, like if you were Harry Potter with that cloak that made you disappear, right? You know you're going to use that thing till it's got holes in it, right? I mean, if not Jesus, the point is, that I'm trying to make right now, Jesus doesn't perform the miracles to be popular. And we have to keep that in mind. John never uses the word miracle, remember, he uses the word signs, because signs point to. Jesus is trying to convince people of his deity, not of his greatness, not of his goodness. Someone will come to Jesus and say, good teacher, and he'll say, no one's good except for God above. He's not trying to impress. He's not trying to win favor. He's not trying to gain popularity. And North American believers, we want to be popular almost more than anything. And so it's easy for us to believe that the goal of the miracles for Jesus was to gain popularity. But that's not at all what the goal was. I still find it absolutely amazing that the crowds observe the very same miracles, signs, and wonders that the religious leaders do, but they respond to it differently. The crowds and the leaders, right? The crowds believe in him, and then the leaders are always asking for one more sign. Well, what sign do you do to verify and authenticate that you could do that sign or that sign? And they're always questioning, and they're never coming to embrace or accept. And isn't that true in life? I mean, you think about it. We raised 4 kids, and all 4 of our boys have different personalities, different character, different constitution, right? I guess the most common cliche is, well, Talis and Kellen, I bet you guys have worked accidents as police officers, right? And I know the person who did the crime, who hit the person, had a different eyewitness account of the person that got hit, right? But how about bystanders who aren't even involved? Do they not see things differently? And that's kind of the big cliche in talking about truth or objective, real things that happen. Well, people can see the same accident and have a different view of it, right? I mean, we're still watching the JFK assassination. What is that? I can't think of the guy's name. Magruder, whatever. Magruder. I know it sounds like something Bruder. Right? I mean, we're watching this like, 60 years later, and we're still talking about how did it, and, there's all the people.
They've got it solved, apparently. We were watching this last night, man. I was going down rabbit holes and explaining stuff to guys.
And of course, the Kennedy that's running for office now is saying that the CIA or the FBI hadn't killed whatever. Everybody can see the same event and have a different opinion. So don't be surprised when you look at something as beautiful as a sunrise or sunset. Say, that's God's handiwork, and the person next to you is like, no, it's not. It's just the atmosphere, right? How is it that people can see things differently, right? They watch Jesus, they observe Jesus, and they draw different conclusions. Some respect him for it, others resent him. So Jesus, if you believe in him, he doesn't entrust himself. Doesn't give himself over. He's not swayed. Because he knows at our best, sometimes we're inauthentic. We have a tendency to be selfish or self-centered. If we'll be honest, we are not as dependable and reliable as we want to think we are. And I'm not saying that to beat anyone up, myself included. Let me beat you guys up. We could look at this as group therapy too. I don't care how you want to look at it. But we're not as good as we claim we are. We're not as perfect as we want to be. And guess what? If we were, we wouldn't be here because Jesus would have died for us. But he still is perceptive enough to be with an unreliable crowd, invest blood, sweat, and tears, invest time in teaching and ministering and coaching them along, even knowing that they're going to betray him. I don't know that there's anything more painful in life than feeling like you're betrayed by someone who's close to you. Imagine being betrayed by 7 billion people, right? And yet Jesus still, amazingly, chooses to redeem them. Maybe that's the greatest miracle of all. So they see the signs, they see the wonders, they believe in him, he doesn't entrust himself to them. And we see a Jesus, as we look closer into the Gospel of John, who is perceptive, who has the divine insights to look right to the core of the matter, right to the heart. And I'm telling you, he seems skeptical to me. He seems cynical. He needed no one to bear witness about man, for he himself knew what was in man. He knows the hearts of us, which sounds like bad news. But Jesus knows my flaws and my imperfections and my tendencies to not always be the best. The good news is, listen, when it's time to come to God in prayer, you can't hold anything back. You don't have to hold anything back out of the fear of embarrassment or rejection, because he already knows all that. He dies for us anyway. So for me, that's good news. He knows what we're capable of, but he knows our limitations. He knows how we can be selfish, how pride can corrupt us, how we can be easily distracted. Yes, he knows you struggle with sin. He knows I struggle with sin. And he knows that oftentimes most of our efforts are just self-preservation. I used to feel my priorities and motivations as a Christian were very immature and self-centered, and it used to worry me like, okay, I'm really only approaching God for forgiveness because I don't want to go to hell. And then I'm like, yeah, I really don't want to go to hell. I really do want to be mature. I do want to be more like Christ. And it's like, duh. Why do I worry about seeming like I'm approaching God in that channel from a selfish perspective? Because I want to have His grace and His forgiveness, and that somehow makes me a bad person? No, what makes me a bad person is when I come to a conclusion that says, well, why bother trying? And I don't really care what God thinks. What's the point? That, I think, would not be a good reflection of any of us. But to recognize that God himself knows what's in the heart of man, but still chooses to redeem us, makes it good news to me. It encourages me that I can't hide anything from him. I shouldn't feel like it. I shouldn't be embarrassed to bring my junk before God and confess it and ask self-preservation wise for God to forgive it. I think he already knows all that. But the bigger question is, what would you have done if you were in Jesus' place? If you come to the temple, you turn the tables over, and all of a sudden, all these people start to believe in you. What would you have done? And listen, if the goal is to get your message out to as many people as possible, the gospel, good news, my salvation for all mankind, right? You're Jesus. If that's the goal, he certainly doesn't go about it the same way we thought we would do it. Right? Like the old saying, never let a crisis go to waste, right? There's no such thing. The guy from the circus, Barnum and Bailey, said there's no such thing as bad publicity, right? I think he's the one who first said that, right? So the religious leaders don't like you. Ride that one, Jesus. Get out there with the crowds. Ride the wave of popularity. And John is saying, no. In fact, for us, it seems very counterintuitive that Jesus doesn't leverage the influence that he has. Oh, they all believe in him, so Jesus should just let them crowd surf him, right? He's like in the mosh pit, and he's just going to be, your own personal Jesus, like Depeche Mode sang about. And if you've not listened to the Johnny Cash cover of the Depeche Mode songs, your own personal Jesus, don't laugh at me, Talis. It's good stuff. It is good, but Jesus is not. He's not there like that. All that influence, all of that attention, he doesn't leverage it. In fact, by our standards today, we say, well, Jesus, you don't really know how to network. You're not a very good influencer. Nobody's hitting like on your Instagram account, Jesus. You're not doing it right. And why is that? He could care less about the crowd's approval. It's hard for us to grasp that, to be able to filter that, but he's not seeking their approval, he's not seeking their acceptance. He doesn't want their endorsement. It's almost as if Jesus is trying to rescue them from themselves. How do I know that? Because most of us, if we're honest, will do almost anything at times in our life to be popular, to be liked, to be accepted, to be cool. Right? That's peer pressure 101. Calvin and Amber, I feel sorry for you, because Gunnar is at that age right now. You just turned 13, right? How old are you? 14. 14.
He'll be 14 in
Hey,
July.
Gunnar, have you seen the meme of the mom and the daughter in the kitchen? And the mom says, "Hey, Sarah, am I a good mom?" And the girl says, "My name is Amy." 14. So you're in the heat of it. And I pray for your family every day. I do. And you're in the heat of it, man. You're at that age. Everybody's looking at me. I got to be careful what I wear, what I say. And there's so much peer pressure. But you know what, Gunnar? Every adult in this room can tell you we all go through it. It's not just for your age or your generation. But peer pressure 101. I want to be popular. I want to be liked. I want to be accepted. And Jesus refuses sidetracked by that. Because he knows what's in the heart of man. He's not sidetracked, he's not influenced, he's not manipulated by it. He observes and he says, I know what people are capable of. And as believers, maybe if we were more confident in the power of the gospel, we could follow Jesus' example of not being worried about being popular, but being liked. And I know you're saying, it's so counterintuitive. We have this really, really important message. Adam and Eve sinned. Everybody sins. There's consequences for sin. Jesus, at the cross, erases that. You can be forgiven. You can have a future in heaven. Shouldn't we do anything to get people on that train, to ride the J train? It's a really good Christian song. It's like a rap song. The J train. I'm not batting 330 today, am I, Governor? I'm not even getting past plate, first plate, whatever. Here's the Depeche Mode, the Johnny Cash, the J Train. Right. Well, let's stick with what I do know. You can either run with the crowd or you can save the crowd, but you can't do both. 1 Corinthians 15:33, do not be deceived. Bad company corrupts good character. We're going to be like the people we hang around with. You can run with the crowd or you can save the crowd, but you can't do both, and I'll tell you why. Crowds create complacency, which leads to mediocrity. When you just plateau. That happens every single time. And Jesus doesn't fall for their religious buzz. And that's all they experienced that day in the temple when he cleaned it. Oh, wow. That's what we've been looking for. Man, he really socked it to those guys. Doesn't that feel good? All that adrenaline, watch Jesus go. It doesn't carry you very far. Jesus doesn't fall for the enthusiasm. He doesn't fall for the trap of popularity. And it's a mistake for believers to assume that if we're popular, people are going to accept our message, or that that's a key to spreading the message, that trap of popularity. It's also a big mistake to think that our message is ever going to be popular. But Craig, why wouldn't people want to be forgiven? Why wouldn't they want to go to heaven? Why wouldn't they want to be like God? Because you have to give everything up. Jesus says, if you'll follow me, take up your cross, die to yourself. Jesus says you have to submit. You have to make him Lord. That's never going to be popular. The idea that someone else gets to make the choices for me, someone else directs my destiny, someone else knows me better than I know me and knows what's better for me, forget it. It's never, ever going to be popular. And you're like, wow, Craig, thanks for bringing us down. Well, instead of being discouraged by the rejection that we're going to face with this unpopular message of, if you just die to yourself, if you just submit to Jesus, instead of being discouraged by it, I think it fortifies our faith. Why? Because I think Jesus leads by example. He goes through the crowds. He foregoes riding that wave of popularity or seeking the approval or the acceptance. And he says, let's follow God's calling for God's sake, to bring glory to the Father and not for our own. If you'd like to stand.